Loki has already been doing some crazy things to set up the future of the multiverse in the MCU, but especially in episode 2, because spoiler alert, Lady Loki, or this new variant evil version of Loki, sent a bunch of time reset charges throughout the multiverse and throughout the sacred timeline. And I didn't point this out in my review and breakdown, but there was an actual screen at the TVA during all of this madness that showed where all of these reset charges were being sent throughout the timeline, which is kind of insane. And we don't know for sure if we're actually going to see these events and these timelines explored in the series. Most likely not, because there's some pretty big stuff here that would involve some pretty big cameos. But it is still cool to see these little references here and to think about what if we actually did see this and what would actually be going on here in this timeline and in these what if scenarios. So it's pretty cool to think about, and we're going to go ahead and break these down, except we're not going to do all of them because we're going to focus mainly on the MCU ones pertaining to actual MCU locations. There are some other cool ones in here that relate to real world historical events, which are pretty cool. But again, today we are specifically talking about the MCU specific ones and how this would tie to the MCU. So anyway, the first one that pops up here is Vormir, April 23rd, 2301. I almost got my numbers mixed up there. So Vormir, of course, is the place where we saw the Soul Stone retrieved in both Infinity War and Endgame, where Red Skull was guarding it and where Gamora and Black Widow then died and sacrificed himself and everything. So it's very interesting that the reset charge would be sent here, because this is a place where not really anything exists. It's kind of just this void of just, I don't even know what to call it, but it's definitely weird. But also really cool to see that we're getting another shout out and some more connections to Vormir. Then next up on the list is Asgard, February 16th, 2004, which would be taking place a couple of years before the first Thor movie. So this would be before Thor is king, and maybe could even be a timeline where Loki is actually in charge and actually the king of Asgard, because we did see a spot in the trailer for Loki where Loki was sitting on the throne in Asgard, but it did look a little different from how it has in past MCU movies. So this is totally something that we could be seeing happening here and would make a lot of sense. Then moving on to Sakaar, which is actually listed as Sakaar Teo, which would be August 13th, 1984. So this would be way before Thor and Hulk arrived there in Thor Ragnarok, and whenever Hulk actually did arrive there. So maybe this would be a timeline where some of the Grandmaster's previous champions would be the champions of his Contest of Champions tournament that he's going on this planet. And we know, based off the structures we saw in that movie, that he had champions like Beta Ray Bill and Bi Beast and Man Thing. So that would be pretty awesome if we actually saw that. But again, most likely we will not. Then next is Ego. Of course, Ego, the living planet, the father of Peter Quill in the MCU. And this is listed as Ego, December 27th, 1382. Of course, right after Christmas. What a tragedy. But Ego at this time was the only inhabitant of this planet. I'm actually not even sure if he was a planet at that time, which is pretty interesting to think about how they even classify this as a place, even though he is an actual celestial being. But either way, I'd love to see some more Ego in the MCU, even though he did die, but I'd still love to see that character return. But next up is Titan, of course, the home of Thanos in the MCU, and also the Eternals, who are going to be starring in the upcoming Eternals movie. I mean, that's kind of why they're called the Eternals. But yeah, so for Titan, it is listed as October 13th, 1982. And I'm not really sure where this would place it in the timeline, but it is still cool that we're getting more references to Titan, again, because we are getting an upcoming movie starring the Eternals, who are also from Titan, because Thanos is also an Eternal. So definitely really cool. But this next one is probably one of the most interesting ones that I could actually see happening and see explored in this series, because New York, United States of America, of course on Earth, September 21st, 1947. And this is super interesting because this would be a time in the timeline where Steve is now on ice, at least in our main prime timeline. Of course, after Avengers Endgame, Steve went back to be with Peggy and changed the whole course of events there, but that is in an alternate reality, in a branch reality. So if we're talking about in our prime MCU continuity with the sacred timeline, this would be again, where Steve is now on ice, and this time would actually be where the events of the Agent Carter TV series take place, which, by the way, I've mentioned it multiple times before, but that series is so good. Plus, Haley Atwell is such a great actress, especially in this role of Agent Peggy Carter, so it would honestly be awesome if they made this canon, and just to harken back to the events of that series and that character would honestly just be so cool, especially because back in the first episode of Loki, there was that moment where a lot of people thought that that was possibly Peggy Carter in the background there, and we still don't know for sure, but this could be another clue to a possibility that we are actually getting an appearance to Peggy Carter in the Loki Disney Plus series, or maybe it could also be just a reference to how Peggy Carter is going to be starring in the first episode of the upcoming Marvel Studios What If Disney Plus series, where she will actually take the Super Soldier Serum and become Captain Britain. But then getting into the last couple here, we have Hala, January 3rd, 51 AD. Hala, of course, is the home planet of the Kree, where Captain Marvel originated from, or at least her powers did, because technically Carol Danvers is a human from Earth. But this is interesting because I think this would be actually before the Kree-Skrull War, maybe even, I think that's actually been going on for all of eternity, so you never really know. But definitely cool to see that reference there again. Hopefully we do get some more exploration of Hala and the Kree in Captain Marvel 2 or The Marvels. Now finally we have Xandar, the home of the Nova Corps. And this is September 24th, 1001. So this would be, of course, before the Xandar was actually destroyed, at least according to Thanos, because in Avengers Infinity War, he did reveal that he basically decimated that whole planet and killed all the Nova Corps, but hopefully this could set up for the future of the MCU, where we could see either Richard Rider or Sam Alexander become Nova, the superhero in the Marvel Universe, so I'd love to see that happen. But anyways, guys, that is all of the big ones listed here on this list. Again, not sure if we'll actually see these timelines and these time reset charges explored in this Loki series or not, but it is definitely still cool to see these references and see all these different what-if scenarios and see what could have happened and just all these crazy planets and places we've visited in the MCU so far. But anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think we will see these events explored in the Loki series? And do you have any theories pertaining to any of these specific locations and spots in the timeline? So guys, thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video and hit the subscribe button so I can keep up to date on everything goes on in the Marvel life.